Lights, camera, action. Today, we have actor, producer, creator of the series titled The Godfather of Harlem, MARKUANN SMITH.
Thank you, man, for having me.
This is great having you here, man. This is awesome. This is the first episode that we've had in person.
Wow.
Since I think episode 13. We did all of them on Zoom until now during the pandemic. And the first 13 were all done in podcast studios. So we're back. This is like crazy live. There's like a person here.
There's nothing like being up close and personal.
Yeah, this is, I mean, we're not like two faces in a screen and a Zoom screen. This is, I can't believe that I'm in the studio. This is fantastic. So when we talked, the thing that captured me so much was your heart and your philosophy and what your creative journey has been like. And one of the things that struck me as sort of a thread of your life is one of the quotes that you gave me, which was chase your passion, not your pension, and never give up. And you told me a little bit about growing up in the Rockaways and how your life sort of started out, and how you grew in a sort of your fascination to want to be involved in storytelling and in acting. So get me started where we started off the last time we talked, and how this all began. Because where you are right now, I will get to that, but your story is absolutely amazing.
Oh man, I'll take it back to Harlem, coming up on 128th and St. Nicholas, and going out to Far Rockaway, Queens with my moms, and living out in Ocean Village. Started off in Ocean Village. Ocean Village was a working class community, but Far Rockaway was always considered the Hamptons of Queens, right? But it was nothing but housing projects. You had Hamels, you had Edgemere, you had Auburn, you had Ocean Village, and the list goes on. Redfern, the 40s. And when you're in a community on a little peninsula like that, with a bunch of people that are restless and don't have anything to do during the summertime or during the wintertime, you get in trouble. I started getting into the arts because that's what kind of saved me. I used to like watching movies, so I would lock myself in a room at home and watch some of my favorite movies, like Once Upon a Time in America, or On the Waterfront, or Raging Bull, or Rebel Without a Cause, things of that sort. I started getting to know the producers such as Sergio Leone, and Martin Scorsese and Coppola. I love the way they told the narratives and told their stories, and it was a way to escape from everything that was happening outside at the time. And
so your life in a working sense started with your brother, who was Father MC, right?
Absolutely.
So tell me about being, I guess you were on the road with your brother. I believe you told me that one of the roadies that was with you at the time before he was an artist was Tupac Shakur.
Absolutely. And today's his birthday as well.
Today is the birthday of Tupac Shakur.
June 16th, yep.
Oh my God. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, this is a momentous moment that we have to do this then. Tell me about the story of how that began and how you went and got involved working with your brother as a roadie. This is the beginning of everything, isn't it?
Well, yeah. Well, my brother used to work at Kentucky Fried Chicken. They used to call him the flour guy. And they used to laugh at him because every time he came outside, he had flour on his shirt, and he was telling people, "I'm going to become a rapper. I'm going to secure a record deal." And it didn't matter what he had on, because when he was off, he had on his silk shirt, he had his Bally's, and we were hopping the A train, going to the new music seminar, giving out his demos. We would ride the train and drink 40 ounces together, and eat the little the rice cups with the red sauce at the Chinese store, and we just talk about the future. And 2-3 months later, he had a record deal. Andre Harrell had signed him after winning a contest at a roller skating ring in Brooklyn, Empire roller skating rink. They had a rap battle. So Andre Harrell signed him, and before you knew it, the first video came out, which was "Treat Them Like They Want to Be Treated," and Sean Combs, everybody knows him as Puffy. P Diddy, now he's known as Love, was dancing in the background for him. Prince Marky D and Corey Rooney did the actual first song, and we started to go on tour. My first tour was with Candyman, Troop, High Five, Second to None, AMG, DJ Quick. I started to know about, other music on other different coasts, and it was the most tranquil trips that I used to have on that tour bus, man. Just leaving Far Rockaway and just seeing the world unfold of the whole United States, just watching the country, the countryside pass by on a tour bus, listening to music like the Shy Lights and Blue Magic and the Temptations. We had a road manager by the name of George Harrell. So George turned me on to all the music from the 60s and the 70s and things of that sort. But it was a great experience. And then that's how I met Tupac. Tupac was a roadie for Digital Underground, R.I.P. Shock G. He just passed away recently. And we were just two guys that wanted to do something. They wanted to change the world. Pac was always talking about changing the world and saying, watch what he was going to do. He was going to spark the brain. If he doesn't do it, he wanted to spark the brain that could change the world. And I never wanted to go back to where I was at, to Far Rockaway, because there was nothing out there, with nothing but trouble. Getting off the road, I came back, got in some trouble, went through the juvenile system. I was in Spofford. Spofford is a facility in the Bronx. And from Spofford, I went to a DFY facility called Lincoln Hall. And in Lincoln Hall, in order to get a furlough, I had to read a book called Man-Child in the Promised Land. And Man-Child in the Promised Land is a book by Claude Brown. It was very inspiring, really showcasing it doesn't matter where you come from in your environment, you can make it. And he was addicted. He was a junkie, and he became a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist. And I loved the book and what it stood for. Came back on tour, started again, because these little spurts we had in between tours, we had to kind of figure it out. So my brother fired me. He let me go on his third album, not because he was doing it in a malicious manner, but more like, it's time for you to fly and go on your own. You've met many people. You have contacts. Your network is your net worth, or your net worth is your network, whatever way that you look at it. And I started working at BET.
I see, but this is the roadie time is 1989 to 93.
Yeah.
So that must have extended a while past that, because didn't you start at BET in 2000?
Yeah, 2000.
So that's a healthy 11 years from when you started.
Yeah.
So you must have gone from 89 all the way to 2000.
No, actually, I was on the road from late 89, 90 till about 94, 95.
Okay.
And after that, I had got signed to Whitney Houston's label.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay. So there was another gig.
Yeah, it was another gig.
There was another gig, and then
but during these gigs, you're hoping you can make some money. You're hoping you can get an advance and live off as an artist. So I was signed to a label by the name of A Better Place Records. It was through Nippy Inc. Robin Crawford, Whitney Houston's best friend, started a label with Whitney. They had a group called Sunday. A cousin of mine's by the name of Harold Frazier, he did Pink's first album. He brought me on, and that started my journey as an artist. I also was in the creative side. I was doing summer stock. I was doing plays.
So you're acting.
Yeah, I was acting as well.
Okay, so this is like the 90s all the way up to 2000 when BET happened.
Yeah.
So there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
We're not going to BET yet.
No, not yet.
No.
You
got it.
BET started in 2000.
Yeah, no, and I know a little bit about what you told me about how that began.
Yeah.
But I want to still linger. I want to linger.
Okay.
I want to hear about. I don't want to speed through and like speed read.
Okay.
What happened? Because Whitney, first of all, Whitney's. I mean, as far as I know, Whitney's East Orange, New Jersey, recording there and all that. Okay, so tell me a little bit. I mean, I want to know about what happened there, because I've gotten to know a few folks that were involved in Booga Basement, which was
That was the Fugees.
that was the Fugees,
Yeah.
right? And I think Whitney may have recorded there. Is that correct? Or when you
I'm
were
not sure.
Did what?
So
but you were involved with Whitney during that era.
I was
This is
involved
early,
with
These
Whitney.
are early days.
Yeah, I was involved with Whitney when she had a label deal at Elektra Records. It was Sylvia Rowan, it was Merlin Bob, uh, and these were the individuals. Those were the executives over there.
And what were you? And I'm sorry to ask the stupid
No,
question.
it's
What
not
was your
stupid.
What was your job? What were you doing with Whitney?
Well, I was an artist.
You were an artist.
Yeah,
you
I
were
was an
you were-
artist.
You were
Yeah.
with her.
Yeah, I was an artist. I was an art. It was a camp of us, and I was one of the artists that. And Harold Fraser was doing all the music for most of the music, the majority of the music. So he brought me in. I was an artist. I had sort of my brother's flow. You know, they had like
So you were an artist singing and
not
rapping.
singing, rapping.
You were rapping.
rapping.
But you were rapping. But
Yeah.
you were rapping under that label. Is that what it was?
Yeah,
Or-
it was
okay.
it was called A Better Place Records.
Okay.
But the group that they were focused on at the time was Sunday, and Sunday was on the Waiting to Exhale soundtrack that Forrest Whitaker
Right.
had
course.
executive.
Yeah.
It's so funny how it comes back around.
Come back
full
around
circle.
with Forrest. Yeah.
that he had executive produced, and I believe he won a Grammy for that album, for the Waiting to Exhale album, as a producer, because he was working alongside with Babyface
Okay.
at that time.
Okay.
So it was a great experience, you know, talking to Whitney, and I remember talking to Robin, and if one thing sticks out to me, I remember going to Robin's house, and she had this awesome denim jean tablecloth. It was almost like straight out of a Ralph Lauren catalog. You know, it had the jean pockets on it with the napkins hanging out. It was really cool. And I also remember going to Whitney's house in Jersey, and Bobby coming downstairs, and it was a fun time at the time. You know, I was still trying to just be around music, because two things that really I love to create was music and telling stories, the different narratives.
So you had a rap career that extended past the point that you were a roadie for your brother.
I wouldn't say it was a rap career. It was trying to be a career.
You were trying.
Right? I
You
was
were trying to
do
be.
that,
You were trying to do
yeah,
that.
absolutely.
And that ran until the BET gig in 2000.
Well, you know what it was. I was also, you know, hustling. You know, trying to figure out where I wanted to be in life. Certain things I wasn't doing the right things, you know. I was just trying to figure it out, man, as an artist, you know, especially during that time, you know, the struggles were real, you know. I wasn't priority on that label, you know. I was there, you know. Hopefully my album would have came out after the priority would have came out, which was Sunday, but that never happened. The label broke apart for whatever business matters it was, and it was on to the next one, trying to figure it out. So
And you were out in LA for like a handful of years before you came back to New York
Yeah.
to go to BET in 2000.
Yeah.
So take me through the roadmap here, because there's a lot going on. And you didn't give me any of that story when we had our little chat.
Okay, yeah.
So I know that you went out there because I think your brother was living out there. Now,
Yeah.
at this point, you've already left working with him as a roadie, right?
Yeah,
But you
yeah.
went out there because he was out there.
Yeah,
Now
and to
talk
let you
about
start,
that.
I was a roadie as well as I graduated from a roadie to become a hype man. So Puffy is the first one that introduced me to becoming a hype man and learning how to move the audience and move the crowd and get them moving. Because as roadies, if people don't know what a roadie is, we did the grunt work. We had to break down
But a hype man was on stage,
the
right?
hype man was on stage.
Okay,
A
so-
roadie is behind the scenes. I had to break down the sets. I had to, back in the days, we used to have coffins, 1,200 turntables, right? 2 turntables. You put them in the coffins, you break them down, and those things was heavy. They were like heavy like a coffin. We had to make sure those were back on the bus. After, say, Technique 1200s, no one was using that anymore. We were using DAT tapes. So I had to make sure the DAT tape was secure for the next show, you know. So those are the things that we did as a roadie. And Trutch was a roadie for Latifah. Pac was a roadie for Digital Underground. So it was kind of work that could be kind of depressing because everybody is leaving and they're going to the after parties. They're going to mess with the girls, the pretty girls and stuff like that. We had to make sure that everything was done before we did anything. So we used to sit on a tour bus and have long talks about, you know, what we wanted to do and things of that sort, you know, being frustrated with the jobs that we had. But my brother did that so I could have been able to travel with him, because he had to use his budget to justify why he had me on the road, because he had two dancers, a DJ, a road manager, his security, and he had me. So that was the reason why Uptown opened up a budget and was like, okay, we could bring him on the road to travel.
And then tell me the stories of being on the road with Tupac. You've said absolutely. I mean, I know that had to be like.
Oh man, I
mean,
remember.
this has got to be. I mean, I'm sorry, but I mean, we can't leave the room without talking about you being a roadie with Tupac Shakur. I mean, this is like, because and then also what I don't understand is, this is like, let's say this is like 89 to 93, 94, right? He transitioned, which and you went through many transitions, but he transitioned to becoming an independent rapper and artist himself, obviously, after being a roadie. But you were with him talking about dreaming to do this.
Absolutely.
Tell me more.
You know, it's so funny when you have these stories and these conversations. I knew Pac as Lassane. I knew him as just Tupac. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't even before he became this successful international rap star or artist, actor. You know, we used to sit down. We dreamt like regular people. You know, we were very unapologetic. He came from growing up in the Bronx to moving to Baltimore to moving out to Marin County, out in the Bay Area, showed me love. I remember we used to do stupid things like knock on people's door at the hotel with buckets of water and say, knock, knock, room service. And as soon as you open the door, you're getting it. And we'd be running down the hallway. We were kids, we were trying to find our own way, things of that sort, messing with the girls. I used to tell girls I was father. I was my brother, I had my brother's jacket on, you know what I'm saying? And
you would pretend to be Father MC.
I would pretend to be Father MC or something like that to get the girls, you know what I'm saying? So we had real fun, man. I do miss him. And it seems like after he came back to New York and he did Above the Rim, and he unfortunately he got incarcerated, we didn't speak as often as we should have spoke. He was out in LA and he was doing stuff with Suge and Death Row, and I was still out here trying to find my way.
Yeah, well, he became part of the West Coast contingent, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that was that whole story. Yeah. So, so now you're rolling forward, and you've done all of this. You've lived it. You've inhabited this world, and somehow there's a change that happens in your life that kind of pushes you in the direction of needing to take for lack of a better word, a job where you got to go to work every day.
Yeah.
Tell me the foundation of why that happened.
Oh man, and I'm totally transparent. I got in some trouble, and I was going back and forth to court. And if anybody knows about 500 Pearl Street, that is not that's not Children's Place. That's not Chuck E. Cheese. That's the United States versus you. And I got caught up in a conspiracy charge of money, and my mother was frustrated. I thought I left that life alone when I was in the whole DFY thing, going through Spofford and everything of that sort. Rikers Island visits, and I didn't know what to do. I was going to court for a year, and I never realized what the federal government was until going to 500 Pearl Street and walking down that ramp, and you see the M16s and the U.S. Marshals right there, right? And I was like, I got to change my life. And I started going back and forth to court. I was going to court for a year. And I remember one time sitting in the hallway with my mother, and an Italian guy comes outside with his wife, and I'm ear hustling, and he says to his wife, hey, that's my lawyer. He got me 87 months. That's a great deal. And I started counting on my fingers. 12 months is a year. 24 months is 2 year. Oh God, 36 months is 3 years. And that's how the feds sentence you in. So I was going to court for a year. Fortunately, my judge, who was Denny Chin. Denny Chin is the judge that sentenced Bernie Madoff. He looked at my court records, and I had a wonderful attorney by the name of Anthony Cueto. And Anthony Cueto was like, he was the bottom barrel of this whole conspiracy. We're asking you to give him another opportunity. I remember Denny Chin saying, that's close, but not no cigar. Because in the federal guidelines, they have to sentence you. It doesn't matter if you found the cure to cancer, you know. You have to take ownership of what you have. You get a downward departure, whatever like that. So he came and said, he came back in and said, you know what? I'm going to give you 5 years, it's 3 years federal probation, but it's been over 20 years. I don't know if it's 3 or 5 years federal probation. So I was on federal probation and I had to pay a fine of like $2,000. That's how minimal it was, right? And I had to find a job. You know, I was on federal probation, so when the probation officer comes to your house, they look at the blueprint of your house. They look to see what the backyard looks like, the basement looks like, and they need to know that you have a job. And at that time, I was still doing music. I was with another label called the Specialist Entertainment. They did Pink's album and Adina Howard and a bunch of other people, but I wasn't getting any money. So one time my PO showed up and he smelled weed in there, and I don't smoke weed, but obviously I'm around that. He was like, "Nah, you need to get a real job. You need to get a job as soon as possible. I'm going to violate you." And I just happened one day to say, you know what? I'm gonna fax in my job, whatever jobs I did on the road or whatever like that, and I sent it into BET. And I initially wanted to do what Tigger was doing, which was he was doing Rap City in the basement, but they already had him as a host. And they said, "Yeah, we have a job for you. May not be the best job, but it's a job." And it was a job where I was actually monitoring videos, music videos. I was basically the videos that went in low rotation, medium rotation, or high rotation. I would send it down to DC. And it was like something that I didn't really want to do, but I had to do what I had to do. And I remember my probation officer coming and saying, "Hey, you're here, come downstairs, stick your head out." So I used to have to come down and stick my head out. That's when we were at 106 in Park. And it's so crazy because while I was on probation, I realized what, you know, I don't even know what the word to say, but I was targeted because they were looking at me a certain way, looking to violate me for anything. I mean, anything. So I remember I had a probation officer by the name of Bloomfield. He was cool. He was down on Livingston Street. He didn't give me a problem. And then I had this guy by the name of Chang, this Asian guy, and he gave me the worst problems ever. It's a funny thing that happened. I was walking up the hill. We had 106 in Park. I get a phone call from a regular individual, whoever it is. It says, "This is Officer," say her name is Officer Hernandez. Now I know that my probation officer is Chang, is not Officer Hernandez. And she was like, "You need to give back this phone. If you don't get back this phone, I'm going to violate you." And I said, "What phone are you talking about?" Turns out this intern at my job, whose cousin she hooked me up with to go out on a date with, she was calling me from a phone, right? Her baby father used to clean the federal buildings, and he took a bulletproof vest, a federal phone, and he was calling me from that phone. So I didn't have anything to do with that. So I had to get on my Sherlock Holmes, I Spy stuff. I called my lawyer. My lawyer was like, we're going to sue them for even trying to target you like that. And they found out what happened, and no one apologized or anything like that. And I remember going to see him one day, and there was a cell phone in the waiting room. I said, "Hey, somebody left their cell phone in the waiting room." And he said, "Oh." And, you know, I did it. I got off of it, and I said to myself, this is something I never want to experience or go through again in life. And yeah, so during that time, I was working at BET. I was only working there because I had to work there, but then it became 1 year became 2 years, 3 years became 8 years, 8 years became 16 years. And I just felt working there, and this is no shade to BET. I just felt that there was a glass ceiling that I couldn't get past. And I was better than just working in a cubicle in a dark room, and everybody says, "Oh, give him a videotape and let him send it down to DC," or give him the music cue sheets and let him figure it out, or whatever like that. You know, I was always a creative person. You know,
And you were placed in a completely coordinator and administrative role.
Exactly. And not only that, people in our business get kind of like really what's the word, defensive. If you see somebody that you know, it's like, don't say anything to the artist. And I'm like, I was on tour with these artists. I know who these artists are. They know me. You know what I'm saying? So I was getting up every Sunday, not looking forward to going to work on Monday, and people outside were like, well, you work at BET. That must be so cool to go to the hip hop awards. That must be so cool, so cool to go to the to the BET awards. But then you have to look at the inside and the internal things that are happening. You have people that are working 18-hour shifts to promote your show, and you have to fight for tickets to go to the show. You feel what I'm saying? So it wasn't all the glory that people thought it was. It was a lot of like days where I was like, I have to really figure it out. But I was always creating while I was there. I was using them as my office. So I was using their fax machine. I was creating. I've got so many contracts that were offered to BET and shows that I had, but it wasn't just the right place or the right contract that I needed to do to put it out that way.
So you were writing treatments or ideas for shows
Absolutely.
Back then.
Absolutely.
I mean, and this now leads to where we're going to go.
Absolutely.
Quite clearly. As your transition, I think, was in 2016, from what you told me.
Yeah.
You were severed from BET.
Well, when I say
or did you just leave? What
no,
was it exactly?
It wasn't severed. What happened was when BET came to New York from DC, Viacom bought them for, Bob Johnson owned BET. He sold it to he sold it to Viacom for $2.5 billion or whatever it may be. We were at 106 and Park uptown. So when at 106 and Park, they brought us down to 57th Street, 555 building, the BMW building on 57th Street, 57th and 12th. And I guess Viacom gave BET a certain amount of time of a window before they came in and actually started reorganizing. There you go. You know
okay.
What I'm saying?
So that
takeover.
So in that process, there were people who were consolidated in departments that were changed.
Absolutely.
And you were there when that took place, and
absolutely.
And you were caught in that transition.
And I hated to hear, like, after every awards show, oh my God, their heads are gonna roll. Or every year, people are like on the eggshells, hoping that they have a job the next year, and it just became so crazy. I remember one time they had to send grief counselors down to DC because you had people that were working there for 21 years, 22 years. They had kids in colleges, they had mortgages, and they had to send grief counselors down there. So fast forward 2016. Viacom said, okay, enough is enough. We're going to come in and restructure and reorganize. We're not getting what we hoped we would. Out of 15 years of town halls and everything of that sort, it's not happening. So when I started looking across, it was really no more brown people across from me. It was Viacom people. It wasn't BET HR anymore. It wasn't BET finance anymore. It was Viacom.
Viacom executives.
Viacom started really putting that nail and hammer down. And I remember the hammer to the nail. And I remember my supervisor, and we had a great rapport, as I thought. He called me one day, or he emailed me and said, make sure you come in for the team meeting, right? And I said, okay, I'm going to come in for the team meeting. Make sure you come in for the team meeting. Okay, Marquann, come in. Walked in, I see his boss, him, and HR. And he's like, it really disappointed me. He was like, his boss was like, yes, Marquann, you've been here for so long. You're a great asset to the company. We really don't need you anymore. He just jumped in and said that, and they gave me $4,000 in severance and told me to figure it out. It was really disappointing. It was really
after 16 years.
After 16 years,
that's all they gave you in the because this was you're no longer under the old company. Now it's a takeover, and now everything that you had built in your time at BET started, because when a takeover happens, the new company starts the clock at day one.
Yep.
So I've seen that. I've experienced this in my own career, unfortunately.
Wow.
Yeah. I won't go into the story, but I was with a joint for 25 years. And
Yeah.
in the 21st year, a new company came in and bought the place I worked for and kept me.
Yeah.
And 4 more years they kept me to get what they wanted. And then 4 years later, I was gone, right?
Yeah.
And all of the 21 years prior, I had built all that equity,
Yeah.
right? And we're talking about chase your passion, not your pension. Well, I was chasing my pension,
Yeah.
but the 21 years that I put in started on the 22nd year at year one.
Yeah.
So when I left the next leg, I was only a 4-year employee, but I had been with the company for 25 years.
Wow.
And so the new company has the right to say adios to you.
Yeah.
So that's such a punch in the face.
It is.
But it's also emblematic of the story that you and I discussed. And what I love about that personally is that you talked about how this energized you to become independent and to realize that you no longer would want the next leg of your life to be working for someone, but to be working for Marquann.
But and this goes back to piggyback on what you're saying right now, is that you just get tired of going to auditions at 12 o'clock and your boss yelling at you while you're not back at 12:30, or you're getting up in the morning and you have to be to work at 10:45. If you're 20 minutes late, you're getting another grown man is yelling at you. Like you have to grab your own destiny.
And I always say, and I have many bosses that used to say to me, Charlie, you don't work for us, you work for you.
Yeah.
And I mean, when you think about it, right, everybody works for themselves,
Yeah.
right? But at a company, you become an instrument to where they're going. But hopefully along the way, you gain something that lets you build the path to the next chapter.
Yeah, absolutely.
It sounded like at BET, you had, while doing things that were administrative, you had the opportunity to think creatively and to come up with ideas. And you told me the most beautiful story about your godmother.
Yeah.
And that's where I wanted to go next, even though it's a bit of a zigzag. Her name was Margaret Johnson?
Margaret Johnson.
Okay, which is amazing because that's the same name as Bumpy, but it's not the same family, right? Because
It is the same
It is the same family.
It is
That's
the
her.
same.
So she is
She's Bumpy's granddaughter.
Okay, she's Bumpy's granddaughter. Okay,
Yep.
see, this I didn't know. I knew that she was your godmother,
Yeah, yeah.
and I knew she told you the stories
Yeah.
of Bumpy. Okay, so this is like an epic moment because I'm winding the clock back because this is a woman who was in your life when you were growing up, right?
No, this is a woman that came in my life in 2000. 99.
Oh, not until 2000.
Yeah, 99, 2000.
But she was but to be your godmother.
She adopted me as her godson. Yeah.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Now you got to take me where this goes,
Okay.
because I didn't know that as your godmother, that this happened as an adopted godmother much later in life.
Much later on in
Much
life,
later,
yeah.
because 2000 is when you're starting
yeah.
the journey at BET.
So what
So that whole time you were talking to Margaret.
So what happened is this. My cousin Tony, Victor Dunlop, he's an attorney right now. He's a JAG attorney. His mother was Margaret's best friend. Okay. So they had a relationship because Margaret was an MTA worker. She drove buses. And they grew up in Harlem together, running the streets of Harlem. His mother passed away. And when Tony came home from law school, he was like, I want to introduce you to Margaret. And I met Margaret, and Margaret just took a liking to me. Tony really wasn't into Margaret at the time because Margaret at the time was, she used to be addicted to drugs at the time, and his mother used to party with her, and wasn't on drugs when I met her or anything of that sort. And Tony just felt a certain way about that. I started going to see Margaret every Sunday, man, like every Sunday, just to make sure she was good. It was just
Where?
in Lenox Terrace in Harlem. And
Keep going.
she was the most amazing person I've ever met. She was very protective over me. She looked at me like I was her son, and she used to tell me these magical stories about Harlem, how she used to walk out of a tenement building and smell fresh laundry hanging out a window in the 60s, or walk past 125th Street and you see James Brown's name on a marquee, or even walk past Sugar Ray Robinson's barbershop, look inside, you might see Jackie Wilson sitting down, or Nat King Cole getting a haircut, or hear Sam Cooke's voice coming out of a transistor radio. She was talking about how Harlem and the food and the culture, you can go get chicken and waffles at 1 in the morning, or go to 22 West. 22 West had the best breakfast. But she also told me about how African Americans migrated from the South, whether it was South Carolina, North Carolina, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, and they left the Bull Connor South of the dogs, the hoses, the fire hoses, but came up to New York, but they were still facing racism. Certain stores wouldn't let you try on a hat without putting a shower cap on your head if you were African American. They had a steak restaurant on 125th Street where an African American family couldn't enjoy a steak dinner. While the other patrons were in the back eating, enjoying themselves, having drinks, they had to wait outside and take it to go. Racism was prevalent. It was the most tumultuous times in America at that time. Emmett Till just passed away. Medgar Evers just got assassinated, a couple of years ago.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was the stories were so amazing. But she used to tell me about her grandfather. The streets know him as Bumpy Johnson, Ellsworth Raymond Johnson, and how he came up to New York City from Charleston, South Carolina. He was a Geechee Gullah. But he didn't come up here to become a gangster. He actually came up here to become an attorney. So he went to City College to get financial aid. Same thing that Malcolm X was. Malcolm X wanted to become an attorney. And the bursar said, we don't give financial aid to colored individuals. And he said, I'm going to make you eat your words. So he had to do what he had to do best. And Bumpy came up. He was born in 1905, October 31st. But he came up around the Maya Lanskys, the Lucky Lucianos, the Vito Genovese, the Frank Costellos, He
was connected to the entire structure of the mob in New York.
The heads of the Five family, the origin, the growth of it. And the warden in Alcatraz said he had the highest IQ he ever saw for a colored man. But Bumpy wasn't just a gangster. He was a self-published poet. He read Nietzsche, Shakespeare. It's even rumors that he beat Bobby Fischer in chess. And she wanted the real story of her father/grandfather told, not the one you saw in American Gangster or Hoodlum or the Cotton Club. Bumpy didn't die in front of 20 RCA TVs talking about Pepsi was the best product that you saw in American Gangster. Bumpy actually died in my character's arms. I play a character by the name of Jameson Junibird in a Wells restaurant of congestive heart failure. And she wanted the real story to be told, and I made her a promise that I would get it done since 2000.
And that's the birth of the Godfather of Harlem. You created the story.
Yes.
You wrote the story. And Bumpy was born in 1905, but the real running, he moves to Harlem in 1919, and then in the 30s he's running numbers with Madame Stephanie St. Clair, I guess.
Yes.
And then is somehow working against this guy Dutch Schultz. Tell me about that part of the story.
Well, that's the story that we didn't tell because you've seen it so much. That was in Hoodlum. The Godfather of Harlem starts off in 1963.
1963.
In 1963.
When he gets out of prison, after
Alcatraz.
he was sentenced in the 1950s, he had a 15-year sentence. He was let out in 63.
Yep.
He's got 5 more years to live because he dies in 68.
Dies in 68.
Right. And you're telling the story from the moment that he returns to Harlem in 1963.
1963.
Amazing. Amazing.
Collision of Civil Rights in the Underworld. Chris Brancato is a brilliant writer. And Paul Eckstein and the rest of the team. We wanted just to tell a story that you haven't seen before. We didn't want to tell about the flappers and hanging off of a 1920 Cadillac and shooting Tommy guns. That wasn't the story we wanted to tell. We wanted to tell a story about what was happening in America, and it's so parallel to what's happening in America as of today. from the LGBTQ movements to the Me Too movements to the Black Lives Matter movements to the Black and I'm Proud movements to women's rights. It all started in the 60s. And that's exactly what you see when you turn on MSNBC, CNN, Fox. You see this. So we want that's the parallel, the POV. Because if you think about it, the Harlem riots is Ferguson, right?
That's right.
Muhammad Ali.
That's what it is.
Muhammad Ali is Colin Kaepernick. History is repeating itself and repeating itself. So we wanted to show something, a conversation piece, which is not entertainment, it's edutainment.
Yeah. And the guy and tell me how, because this is a big deal. I mean, now think about. I mean, you were out of work, 4,000 severance. You'd hit bottom, but you have this story in your hands, and then there are these players that have to come together through Jim Aitchison, Jay Cohen from Gersh, all these guys that you told me about that made this come. Tell me how did this story happen? How did you go out of BET having had what really was, I guess, right, the treatment from your conversations with your godmother?
Yeah.
Because you are the story of the Godfather of Harlem. This is your story.
You know what?
You're the guy telling this story.
Charlie, you're absolutely right. I was in a dark, deep place after leaving BET. And I realized that.
Tell me about that. That's what I want to hear about.
I realized that you don't really have friends. They're your work friends, your work buddies. We work in a world of freelance, right? And you would think, you've been working with someone for 15 years and they say, tap you on the shoulder and say, yeah, there's some work over here, or there's some work over there. And I realized that you're not as good as what you did yesterday. You're as good as what you do today. And I had to figure it out, man. I was in a deep place. I was able to get unemployment. Thank God. I had my $4,000 of severance, and I had to make it work. And I knew I had to make it work. Failure was not an option. I didn't have a plan B. I never had a plan B. So one day I was in my apartment, and I'm wondering to myself, damn, I just ran through my American Express card. They just turned that down. My Discover card is turned down. Matter of fact, American Express turned me down before I even could get to them because, they're a charge card. They'll see your credit limits, and they were like, well, and I'm like, something has to happen. And I was sitting down having a conversation with an individual by the name of Bernard Alexander. He's like my uncle from the music industry. And I was, he knew that I was trying to work on this project for such a long time. And he was working on the American Gangster project with Antoine Fuqua before Ridley Scott came on board. And this is way before with Ari Lerner.
Avi Lerner, yeah.
Avi Lerner, yeah, that's his name, Avi Lerner. And they were, I think it was through Millennium Pictures or something.
Which is Avi's company.
Yeah, they were trying to do it through there. And it didn't work out. But he introduced me to my partner, Jim Aitchison, right? And I was talking to Jim on the phone about...
Slow down there. Is your partner Jim Aitchison?
Yeah.
Tell me about that. How did that...
Well, Bernard introduced me to Jim.
Oh, I see. And and he became your partner.
And he became my partner.
Right,
I'm sorry.
yeah.
I didn't mean to skip.
Yeah.
So he became my partner. And I had a conversation with Jim. And I said, I'm doing this project about a guy by the name of Ellsworth Raymond Johnson, Bumpy Johnson. Do you know who he is? He's like, yeah, I know who Bumpy Johnson is. I might be a white boy from Boston, but I know who Bumpy is, And the other day he told me he really didn't know who Bumpy was. He had to do his Google. He had to go online and Google and do research. But at that time, he introduced me to another good friend of mine by the name of Jay Cohen. And Jim and Jay Cohen are great friends. Jay is the head guy over at Gersh. So they were talking about Bumpy on the phone. They were asking, what did I envision it being? Do I envision it being a series or a limited series? And they broke down, the specifics, how The Walking Dead was supposed to be a series that turned into a limited series because it did so well. And I said, I think this can be a series. And they were like, well, we're going to get back in contact with you. Called me back the next day and he said, I really like this project. Let's think about how we can get a writer and how we can make everything happen. So the next couple of months, I did a lot of research. I was in the Schomburg Museum pulling microfilm, and there's not that much about Bumpy out there. I mean, I had to really dig and dig and dig. It was almost like I was living in the Schomburg. A friend of mine named Tony Gentry, he was helping me, Xerox and papers and going through research with me. We had to dig, and I got as much as I could about Bumpy, about Malcolm X, about Adam Clayton Powell. And while I was talking to Jim, he mentioned to his wife about the project, and his wife is like my big sister. Her name is Joanne Colano, and Joanne happens to be a partner at Brillstein Entertainment, and she's the most amazing person that you could ever meet. Her and Jim are like, I'm an adopted Atchison. They call me their son, and their little brother. And Jim said one day, he said, "What would you think about Forrest Whitaker playing Bumpy Johnson?" And I said, "Man, get the fuck out of here." And I hung up the phone. I'm like, I haven't even met Jim. I was just talking to him over the phone, right? He called me back. He said, "No, I'm serious because he's about to come spend the night at the house." And he said, "I forgot to tell you, Joanne manages Forrest." And I was like, wow. I said, "I would love for him. That would be something that's amazing to do." So I ended up meeting Nina, Forrest's producing partner. And Forrest took me under his wing like I was his little brother. He saw my determination, and he said I reminded him of being unapologetic, just like he was. And he said, "You know what? I want to commit to produce it with you, but I'm not playing him as of yet because we still had to find a writer." And he wanted to know, as an actor myself, how does it come out the pages? How does it represent? How can I become this character? So I was getting a lot of spec scripts from UTA, CAA, William Morris to go through with different writers. And we were just trying to find the right writer. So one day at home, Charlie, I was like late at night going through IMDb, looking at my favorite mobster movies. And I looked at Hoodlum. I said, let me give Jim a call. It was late at night. It must have been about 12 o'clock LA. It must have been like 2, 3 New York. I said, "Hey, Jim, you know Chris Brancato?" He said, "Chris, you mean the writer?" I was like, "Yeah, do you know him?" He's like, "Yeah, he lives right across the street from me. He comes over every Sunday, and Joanne makes this big Italian dinner, and he comes over and he hangs out, him and his family." I said, "Well, do you think he may want to work on this with us? Because he did Hoodlum, and that's in the same landscape." And he said, I'll call him up and let's see if he'll want to do it or not." 2 days later, he said, "I spoke to Chris. Chris said that he can't work on it right now because he's working on this project called Las Sirenas. It's a pilot on CBS. And he's also just coming off of doing Narcos, and he's working on the El Chapo series that was supposed to get picked up in Nat Geo. So he can't do it." I said, "What about Paul?" He said, let me call Chris back and ask Paul." Paul said, "Hell yeah, I can do it." Paul said, "I'm going to fly in to meet Marquann." He flew in to meet me. We sat down and talked. And with the last name was Eckstein, I thought it was a Jewish guy I was going to meet. But Paul is a brother. He says his father is Jewish and his mother's African American. And Bumpy actually put his grandmother through secretarial college, so all the stars were aligning. Chris happened to live across the street from my producing partner. Paul's and Chris worked on Bumpy, the Hoodlum movie with Vanessa Williams and Bill Duke. I think it went through United Artists. And it just started in Lawrence Fishburne, and it all started coming together. So myself and Paul sat down. We had a conversation. He said, "Marquann, I'm all in. Let's get this going." Paul worked on it for the first 6 months, and he was just, I was in LA. I was sleeping on his garage floor. We would breaking down skeleton scripts. Jim would come by and break down stories with us. I would go back and forth to LA, flying back and forth. And finally, Chris said, "You know what? Las Sirenas didn't get picked up, and I'll come work on the project, but we have to tell it through a different perspective, different POV. Let's tell it from Bumpy leaving Alcatraz in 1963, coming back to a different America, a different world that he had left behind." And we was like, wow, let's do it. And his relationship with the civil rights leader, which was Malcolm X and Adam Clayton Powell. and the log line was the collision of civil rights and the underworld. So after doing my deal with ABC Disney, Tracy Underwood, because Chris had an overall deal at ABC Signature, Pat Moran, who's no longer the president there, he supported us, and Tracy supported us, and was like, let's get this project going.
So did they come in with the development money that you needed to do the rest of the leg? How did that work when you say they came in?
Well, actually,
because Epix is the streamer, but you had ABC Disney with you as a financier, creative partner. What were they?
They were a creative partner and financier as far as paying for the script to get written.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah. As far as paying the script to get written. So Paul and Chris wrote the script to get it written, and myself and Jim were giving notes. I was tweaking the dialogue, making sure the dialogue was correct for the era and the slang. I was doing the interviews with all the OGs out in Harlem. They would sit down and they would talk to me. I would, OGs with the likes of Junebug or Cricket or all these numbers runners. So I was getting a wealth of knowledge. So if a writer's room was supposed to start up, they would have all the knowledge that I had built and put in a huge Google Drive document.
Right. So you created the foundation.
Absolutely.
For these guys to write the script.
Yeah.
And ABC Disney came in because they believed that the property was gonna go,
Yep,
obviously.
absolutely.
And now just give me a little moment of the scary moments, because not that our audience is all about people who dream of doing what you've done, but there are certainly plenty of people who do.
Yeah.
I know that there are a lot of up and coming producers and filmmakers that want to follow a dream, and you followed a dream.
Yeah.
2016, you're severance, unemployed, and you're heading in this direction.
Yeah.
When did I don't know when your camera began on Godfather of Harlem, but you were in development for 3 years.
Well,
how long did it take for you to get to shoot episode 1 of season 1?
Well, let me tell you something. There's something in between that as well, right?
Okay.
So we went to Disney. I went to the Disney studios, and I sat down, and I was told, and this is from talking to Chris when Chris was in New York. He said, "Why are you doing this?" I said, "I made a promise, and I got 1,000 no's before I got one yes." So as an actor, I was creating a platform, and I was creating my own destiny. He said, "You know what? I'm going to look forward to writing your lines." And he said, "Let's go." I sat down in the Disney offices, and they told me once again that for this show to get sold and you to be in it, you might as well get struck by lightning twice. And I got struck by lightning twice, Charlie. I'm here with you. And so
I love that. Yeah.
So no, it wasn't just straight from
no, you didn't just jump out.
It wasn't straight from development, writing scripts to it to being shot. We got turned down by 3 networks.
Right, but you started typically anyway. I don't know how you guys started, but in television, typically you start with a pilot script and a Bible for the season.
Yep.
And these days the Bibles are pretty incredible. I don't know what you guys. I would love to see your Bible one day when we get a chance to hang out.
Okay.
Because people who develop series, when they write a pilot script and then they do the Bible, at least these days, is a bound hardcover book with photographs and the look of the story and it's like it's a very dramatic presentation. When you guys did your pilot script and then made your Bible for what the season would be, because that's what you had to pitch, that's a lot of work. How long did it take you to get just to there from start to finish?
Man, we were developing a lease for almost 2 years.
That's what I'm asking.
About 1.5 to 2 years, and the Bible that we had wasn't as fancy as some people's Bibles are, but Chris is a straight professional. He comes from the Dick Wolf camp and being Warren Beatty's assistant, and he just knew what to sell. Like, he's an amazing showman in the room when it comes to pitching a show. And so, and it was just an amazing thing to be out there with Forrest Whitaker. You know, my big brother, I call him, Academy Award winning Forrest Whitaker, Emmy nominated writer, Chris Mercado, uh, uh, producer extraordinaire Paul Eckstein, Jim Atchison, Nina Yang, Bon Jovi. We even had Tracy Underwood and the president of ABC in the room on the pitches.
And you were in the room for the pitches that were done.
Oh yeah, I was part of the. We call ourselves the '96 Bulls. I was part of it. I'm the one that set off the pitches. I'm an amazing pitcher, man.
I love it.
So yeah, I mean, pitching is just not you just being quiet. It's your story. It's your journey. I'm the story behind the story. So I have to set up the lay of the land, the environment, why this story is an important story to be told.
And then when you sold the series for streaming and broadcast on Epix, but the company, I always like to know the structure of these deals. So
Okay.
the ABC Disney took you through that development and pitch process. Did they then financed the series once it was bought by Epix? How did that
No,
go?
absolutely. There's a partnership with Epix, MGM Epix. You know, people say Epix without saying MGM.
MGM, yeah.
MGM Epix. There's a partnership deal with ABC and MGM where MGM Epix, where Epix has the domestic rights and the ABC Signature has the international rights.
Right.
But before we even got down to that point of selling it, we had to go out with the project, right? So WME represented the project. So we went out to 3 networks. You know, we sent it out around the town and only 3 networks bid, you know. And it's so funny because a lot of these executives, they say, oh, we got a show just like that. And it's not the show that you have. You know, it's not New Jack City. It's not Boys in the Hood. You should really take a time to look and read, you know, before just jumping to conclusions just because it's an African American show. It's the same show that you guys
Right,
have.
because they need to, in a real sense, they need to demographically profile every show for the age of the audience,
Yeah.
and the national sort of localization
But
of who's going to be who are going to be the viewers. What is the demographic of your show? Urban, suburban, and rural. Who are your viewers? North America, and then of course they have to go beyond that because they're selling it for the world. So,
but you miss out on great opportunities because there's that urban legend that says African American shows do not do well overseas. And people get kind of scared of touching African American shows to do well overseas.
For international sales.
International sales.
Yeah. And how did that work for you all?
I mean, I said, look at the Black Panther. And they said it was an anomaly. You know what I'm saying? You know, it's really disheartening to hear stuff like that. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But so we went out to 3 networks, and you know, one of the networks were like, you know, we're not sure if this is for us or not because we don't know where we're going to go with it. You know, we got turned down by Stars twice. Chris Albrecht turned us down twice. Ari Emanuel walked us in the second time, was like, Chris, you got to look at the show again. But it was one person, I remember, Mark Corman over at WME, who was a great agent, one of the super agents over there. He represents Chris Mercado. He believed in the project so much. And I remember Chris, and we were on Venice Beach, and Chris is walking by the water. And, you know, these are the days when you as a creator, you're waiting for your agent to call you to see what happened, you know, because, you know, we were pitching and pitching and pitching and pitching. You're waiting to see if they're going to pass or not pass, going to pass or not pass. And we got turned down. And I remember Chris telling me, you know, you have to manage your expectations, right? And I'm listening to him. And I remember going back to New York. It was Christmas during the holidays, and New Year's comes.
What year is this?
This is 2018.
All right.
2018.
All right.
And I remember email that came in, and Chris said it was a noble failure. And I didn't understand what a noble failure is because where I'm from, there aren't any noble failures. Where I'm from, failure is not an option. Where I'm from, there's no plan B. You know, I said to myself, Chris can go write the next hot movie for Robert Downey Jr. and hang out with his private chef and just and write the next best thing on TV, right?
Yeah.
Forrest can go do another Academy Award winning movie. I had to make this work. There was no There was no plan B for me. It's like if I was walking on a tightrope right now, I didn't have a safety net. I didn't want to go back to the streets. I didn't want to go back to doing something that I didn't want to do. All I wanted to do was be a creator. You feel what I'm saying? If I wasn't a creator, I'd rather die. It's like taking the oxygen out of me. And I made a promise to Margaret, who was getting up there in age, that the show would happen. And Margaret passed away in 2016. So I felt like I owed it to her to get this show done by hook or by crook. I was on LinkedIn hitting executives over at Apple and Netflix, after, can we come back in? Can we get another run? Everybody has, I'm not going to say they're giving up, but they were like, we've been in this business, and, for a show to get picked up, it's just don't get your hopes up high, right? But for me, where I'm from and how I was raised, I was always the underdog. I was always the type of person that says, you know what, dream like you live forever, live like you die today. That's my favorite quote by James Dean, and I was going to do it. So one day, Chris hit me up by email and said, hey, there's a junior agent at WME who said there's a network by the name of Epix. Nobody really knew about Epix, but Michael Wright, who just came in from Steven Spielberg's company, Amblin Entertainment, is looking for a narco-ish type feel of show. And we sold him on the show. He wants us to come in and have a meeting. Forrest was about to go away. I was in New York. Paul and Chris, they had things. This is right after the holidays. He said, no, I need to see you guys before you leave. They went inside the room, and what was told to me, Michael Wright was like, I don't want to be coy about this. We have money, and I want this show. And he bought it in the room. Forrest is calling my phone, like my phone was ringing and ringing and ringing. I wasn't picking up because I was in a deep depression because I didn't know what to do next. And he said, Marquann, why you not picking up? We just sold the show. You ready to play your character? And it was just the most surrealist, amazing thing that ever happened to me.
2019?
2019.
Giddy up.
Yeah.
OMG. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Outrageous. And then the people you have. Guillermo Navarro,
the
Ernest Dickerson.
And it's so funny
Hello.
that Ernest Dickerson comes back around because I was in the movie Juice, and we laughed about it on set. I was just like, he said, wow, like, look at how life works.
I mean, I've spent a career's worth with all of Spike's DPs.
Yeah.
And Ernest went off to direct, of course. And
yeah.
This is fantastic. And Guillermo is one of your directors, but he's an amazing director
Oscar Academy Award for Pan's Labyrinth.
Yeah.
Guillermo del Toro's go-to guy. He's a amazing guy. I had Thanksgiving with him, over the pandemic.
He was a cinematographer and a director as well. He
absolutely.
Did both.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. And you had Chris Knorr and Jack Donnelly.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
I mean, what?
Jack is amazing, man. He does magic with his camera, and Chris does it too. It was amazing. These guys were amazing, and I learned so much on the set with them. They embraced me. As an actor, running lines with Forrest and being in the same sandbox with Giancarlo and Paul Savino, and listening to Chad's stories. Chad's story is so similar to mine, where no one wanted to give him an opportunity, and he took and created an opportunity himself with Bronx Tale. And I'm sitting down at his restaurant and him telling me the story of how Bronx Tale came to be, listening to Sylvester Stallone's story when he made Rocky, and no one wanted, to have him play Rocky. I love stories like that. These stories mean so much to me, knowing that Samuel L. Jackson had a substance abuse problem, behind the Apollo, and now look where he's at right now. He beat the odds. Look at Charles Dutton, who went from jail to Yale. He beat the odds. Look at Tim Allen, your friendly white face that's in all your favorite TV shows, your network TV shows, was locked up for cocaine distribution. Look at Eric Bishop, known as Jamie Foxx, who's homeless and living in LA. So I know my story resonates and means something, and I'm not ashamed to tell my story of being unapologetic.
Yeah, no. It's beautiful. I mean, I think in fact I had a brief, not a personal encounter, but through a producing partner with Dwayne Johnson's company.
Yeah.
And when they told me the name of the company and what it meant, I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah.
Because that they're called $7 Productions.
Yeah.
Well, you know how they got their name, right?
No, I don't.
Okay, they got their name because Dwayne tells the story about how he had $7 left
Wow.
at a certain point in his life. and he named his company after that moment of hardship.
Yeah.
So these stories of triumph, it takes us back to the beginning of the thread. Never give up.
Yeah.
Pursue your passion,
Your pursuit
not your
is your
pension.
pursuit of happiness.
But it's also, I say this to my kids. We're in a world now. My son's 23, and my daughter's 26, and we're in a world now where you have to have a digital identity. Definitely, right? I mean, I didn't grow up with that. We didn't even grow up with computers and cell phones when I was growing up, right? But you have to have a digital identity, and you have to become, while you work for others, you have to become your own engine.
Absolutely.
You have to be your own business. And I still feel that the best employee, I mean, and I know this from managing people on jobs that I run, the best employee is the person that treats their job as if they're an owner with you.
Absolutely.
Would you agree?
Absolutely. I say this, if you come to work dressed as the boss, even though you may not be the boss, that's your reflection that this is what you're going to be one day.
I had a producer I worked with recently, and in conversation, it wasn't that things got hot, but you know how things can get hot. And I said to him, I work for you, so what do you want? And he looked at me, he says, no, Charlie, you don't work for me. You work with me.
Absolutely.
And I think that this lesson, right, of that, I mean, all of these components, because the story, I mean, first of all, the story, I mean, is you getting struck by lightning twice.
Yeah.
I mean, this is an inspiration
Yeah.
for any filmmaker. I mean, any filmmaker that's going to watch this episode, anyone who's writing something that doesn't believe it's possible, they're going to look at Marquann Smith and say, what happened here? What the fuck? This is awesome, right? I mean, we have an obligation to share the stories of hitting the bottom and rising back up and never giving up.
Absolutely.
And that's what you've done.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely remarkable.
And it's more than just dreaming. It's about executing your dreams. So we can go to sleep and dream, but if you can't just dream, you have to execute it.
Right. Right. And I think that in order to do that, what do you feel were the tools for you when you were at your darkest place to get back up and make it happen? Because to me, that's fascinating. When you were in the moment where you felt it was all falling apart, how did you keep it together?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I'm very spiritual, and I had God in my life. And there's many nights, I used to just pray and look out my window over the west side and just say to myself and think about, what, I had to kind of like clear my palette. I had to turn my circle into squares. I had to kind of like zone out and put family. I had to become selfish. When you keep living for other people, sometimes that takes away from your dreams, because your family could be, and this is no disrespect, I love my family, but your family could be your biggest dream killers because they don't see what that you see. You're the only one that sees what you see. When you go to sleep at night, you go to sleep by yourself. There's no bunk beds in the graveyard. When you leave this world, I'm not tapping you saying, Charlie, hey, come on. There's another space next to, the plot next to you. We are out by ourselves. So you have to zone out and believe in yourself. And that's how I kept it going.
Every day is a new opportunity. Every day is a new dream. My ex-father-in-law was a veteran in World War II in the Normandy invasion.
Yeah.
And I always say any guy that went through that, every day that they're breathing is a new, beautiful day.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he was the funniest dude, but also he had such an unbreakable spirit because when, and I think, I mean, not everybody doesn't go through rough scrubs, but when we live, going back to the pension versus the passion, when we live for a company to take care of us rather than us to take care of ourselves, we're not living.
If we're not living, because you got to also look at it like this. God forbid something happens to you, that cubicle will be Lysoled out. Your all your belongings will be put in a black bag, and somebody will be replacing you, sitting right there. And you saw it during the time of the pandemic, how many loved ones you lost, and during COVID. I tell this to people all the time. A lot of people want success, but aren't willing to work for success. Are you willing to eat tuna fish sandwiches and ramen noodles when you can't afford to go to Peter Luger's or Ruth Chris? Are you willing to sleep on somebody's couch because you can't afford to stay at the W or the Marriott? Are you willing to take a buddy pass knowing that you have a meeting at Netflix on Monday morning and you have to find a way to leave and get to Netflix to make that meeting? So people want success, but they're not willing to go through what it is to get through the steps of success, and that's what I did. I've been humble, I've been low, and I totally understand. It feels so good now that when I when I come home, I see residual checks in the mail that I don't even have to touch. While I had a $4,000 severance in my pocket in 2016. So I always remember I'm humble, and the key to it is to keep creating. Don't look at it like you made it. You haven't made it. You just keep creating, and you hustle like this is your first, and that's what I do.
And Godfather of Harlem effectively is your first, right? This is your
Absolutely.
first big show.
Yes, it is.
So I'm guessing the next time I see you, there's going to be another one.
Oh yeah, quiet as kept. I'm working on something right now.
That's so exciting. So is it a series or is it a movie?
No, I love the television space. I have some features, but I have a couple of series that I'm working on right now. One of them I'm excited about. I can talk about them. I'm doing a project with the Womack family about Bobby Womack and his life story. I want to kind of envision it like what Aretha Franklin and Ron Howard did, and Brian Grazer did with the Genius series with Aretha Franklin. So I want to do a series on Bobby Womack as well as a documentary. I'm doing a project about D.C. in the late 80s, Marion Barry, Reaganomics, the haves, the have-nots, casteism, socialism, capitalism, with the background of go-go music. That's something I'm excited about.
Oh yeah, that was quite a moment in time.
Very much, and I want to tell that story. The Don Draper world. I'm working on a project about an individual by the name of Corey Pegues. Corey Pegues was a cop, and his book is called Once a Cop. He was a well-known police officer. He used to hustle and sell drugs for a well-known drug organization called the Supreme Team, and God gave him a second chance where he went away to the Army, came home and became one of the top-ranked police officers in New York City, and almost deputy inspector. And he got hurt on the job, and he decided to write a book, a cautionary tale for kids. And the brass found out that he was friends with cop killers, and he sold drugs, and they tried to say he cheated on his test and take away his pension, his badge, and everything. And he's a good friend of mine, and I'm working on telling his series as well. So I love to tell narratives that mean something. I love to tell stories that are conversations, and that's where Godfather of Harlem comes in, because it's not a gangster story. It's a conversation. I like those stories that Sunday, you can watch it with your family. You can sit down, you can have healthy debates, and that's what we wanted Godfather of Harlem to be, and that's where it's at right now. We're the flagship show of Epix.
Season 2 now, season 3. Where are we at now?
We're on season 2 right now.
Season 2.
We're in a mid-season finale. We come back on August 8th.
And then what was there a plan for how many seasons in your roadmap?
Oh, we're gonna take it all the way to 1968 when Bumpy passes away.
Right. So does that story run for 3 seasons, 4 seasons, 5 seasons?
Absolutely. Malcolm dies in 1965. And then the world still goes on after Malcolm dies. Martin Luther King gets assassinated. There's so many things that are happening. And that's why it's the Godfather of Harlem is so beautiful, because it's historical. We're not just making things up out of the air. It
tells the story of what was happening in the civil rights era.
Absolutely.
As a backdrop to everything that goes on in the Bumpy Johnson story.
Yes.
Fantastic. So it just keeps rolling. But does the original plan have a certain amount of seasons that were built into it? Did you have an idea when you started?
Yeah,
or was it endless?
No, we had a plan. We kind of called this like the prequel to American Gangster. We had a plan that we were going to stop in 1968 when Bumpy passed away. and then from then on, everything has its end. Malcolm is going to unfortunately meet his assassination, whether it's in season 4 or whether it's in season 3, however the writers write it out.
Got it. So you just keep building the story of this character that lives until 1968,
yeah,
and everything that happens during that period of time.
He's a tortured older gangster that's trying to change himself and the world.
Yeah,
the Robin Hood of Harlem.
The Robin Hood of Harlem.
Yeah,
perfect. Well, we got through a lot tonight.
Yeah,
I mean, and
we got through without any vodka or anything.
No vodka. And you are an absolute inspiration. What a great time we've had here, man.
Thank you, man. I appreciate
awesome.
you. Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Conversations with
Charlie, bro. Let's do it.
Let's go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Pod Matrix.